It's 2009, and I'm sitting in my apartment at Oberlin College. For my senior thesis, I'm making a short heist movie. As research, I'm watching every film about heists I can get my hands on. The Ocean's movies, Rafifi, The Killing, The Hot Rock, Le Cercle Rouge, The Italian Job, the remake of The Italian Job, The Thomas Crown Affair, the remake of The Thomas Crown Affair. After weeks of watching nothing but heist movies, something hits me. An epiphany. Heist movies are metaphors for filmmaking. Now, maybe this is obvious to you, but in case you haven't thought about it before, let me explain. Most heist movies are about a highly trained team of people, each with their own special skill, working together with clockwork precision to execute one big, elaborate plan. That is exactly what making a movie is. The best example of this, the movie that takes the metaphor the farthest, is Christopher Nolan's which is a sci-fi movie, but it's still a heist movie. If you've heard the Inception as Nolan's take on filmmaking theory before, which I cannot take credit for, bear with me for a minute. So, heist movies by nature are analogous to the filmmaking process, but Inception takes it further. Instead of trying to steal something, the goal of the protagonists is to create a fictional scenario that causes a genuine emotional experience for a stranger. That's what making a movie is. Every character in the film corresponds to a different role in the filmmaking process. The director, the audience, the actor, the screenwriter, the studio executive, the personal life getting in the way. The hero's goal in finishing his job is to finally get home to see his kids. Just like Nolan himself had been away from his family shooting movies much of the previous couple years, and finishing a project meant he got to go home. And look, I don't think it's a coincidence that he cast the movie star that he most resembles in the lead role. This is all a long way of saying that heist movies, whether the filmmakers intended or not, have always, at heart, been about the process of making movies. It's 2005, and I'm in high school. I've just finished making a half-hour action comedy movie, and am beginning work on the feature-length sequel. My friend loans me Robert Rodriguez's book, Rebel Without a Crew, and it becomes my Bible. It's about how Rodriguez launched his career, making micro-budget action movies and doing everything himself. I'm thrilled to find out that a successful director works the same way I do, writing, directing, shooting, and editing everything himself. I'm inspired. Rodriguez becomes my filmmaking hero. So Robert Rodriguez launched his career in 1992 with El Mariachi, an action movie made for $7,000, where he worked as the writer, director, producer, cinematographer, editor, basically everything but actor. This brought him to Hollywood, and for the next decade he continued to also edit every movie he directed. Then in 2002, he was the first major director to follow George Lucas and jump on board the digital cinema train.
When people saw George Lucas's test, they said, that's not going to work. It was that same sort of closed-minded, we're going to wait 10 years to adopt this. I wasn't going to wait that long. I said, I'm following Obi-Wan.
As he implemented new digital cameras into his process, he took over as cinematographer on all his movies, which led to him starting his own studio and doing all his productions in-house. He was taking advantage of these new tools to make the filmmaking process more efficient and to gain more control. What was exciting about Rodriguez was that he didn't feel like a regular Hollywood director. It wasn't just because he was making unpretentious, energetic genre movies, it was because he had found a way to work like a no-budget, independent filmmaker with total creative control, doing everything himself, but within the system and with real budgets. When I was a teenager, I would operate as my own cinematographer and editor out of necessity, and it always felt so amateur and unprofessional compared to the huge film crews I would see in behind-the-scenes documentaries. But then, here was Rodriguez, a guy working the same way as me, saying it's not only okay, but better to do it all yourself. It's faster, it's cheaper, and it can look just as good. And following the advice in his book, I made 2 feature-length movies, a web series, and a ton of short films. It's 2012, and over the last 5 years, I've slowly lost interest in Robert Rodriguez. I get the sense that his new digital tools and faster methods of working have made him lazy, and led to a decline in ambition. His filmmaking output moved away from innovative, energetic action movies to mostly garish, CGI-filled kids' movies and self-aware grindhouse films. I gravitate toward a different director, one who also works like I do, directing, shooting, and editing his own films, but for whom this process and digital technology has increased his ambition and creativity. That director is Steven Soderbergh. Steven Soderbergh's career path is surprisingly similar to Rodriguez's. He launched his career directing and editing a low-budget feature, and then for the next decade, he spent that time working with some of the best cinematographers and editors. Beginning in 2000, he would become his own cinematographer and camera operator on every one of his films, and starting in 2002, he would edit almost all of his projects himself. Like Rodriguez, Soderbergh started using digital cameras in 2002. He'd experiment with different cameras on different projects until making the full shift to digital in 2008. With Soderbergh, there's a sense that he spent the 90s learning from some of the best cinematographers and editors in the business, people like Ed Lachman and Ann V. Coates, until he felt that he was capable enough to take over those jobs himself. In an interview, Soderbergh said, quote, "But eventually it became clear that acting as my own cinematographer could be an aid of me having a more intimate relationship with the movie and with the actors. It seemed very comfortable. I'm not Emmanuel Lubezki, but I'm quick and I'm cheap." Here's a quote from Rodriguez. "Whenever there was a new camera or a new way of visualizing, I wanted to get into it and try, because I knew it would always somehow push the art form. Technology always pushes the art." And with his own work, that was true to an extent, but while his movies became more filled with visual effects, the energy seemed to slip away. But with Soderbergh, the more he took over production roles, and especially when he switched to digital, his ambition and creativity only grew. From 2008 onward, he would frequently make 2 movies per year, switching from indie film to mainstream studio film, going from comedy to drama to action to Magic Mike. And then he made The Knick, directing, shooting, and editing 20 hours of television himself. Here's another Soderbergh quote. "It's hard to be pretentious when you're moving really fast. I have to treat it like a sport." Years before Casey Neistat made the great video, Filmmaking is a Sport, Soderbergh was using that mentality on feature films and prestige TV shows. And this was what really excited me. He wasn't just cutting out crew roles to make things cheaper, he was fusing the different aspects of production into one role, making it faster and more efficient. This felt in a way like the purest form of filmmaking. The stuff I've always made is actually closer to Rodriguez's style, lots of punching and shooting, but Soderbergh is the goal for how I want to work and how I want to approach the work. It's 2017, and I'm going to see Steven Soderbergh's first film since his retirement 4 years earlier. It's called Logan Lucky, and it's a heist movie. I don't think it's a coincidence that Soderbergh's first film back from retirement was a heist movie. This is the same guy who made Ocean's 11, 12, and 13. In the span of 17 years, he made 4 heist movies. Why? Well, the way Soderbergh works, there's an obsession with process you don't see in other filmmakers. Most directors work in a kind of supervisory way. They direct the actors, the cinematographer, the camera operator, and the editor to realize their vision. But Soderbergh is not only directing the cast and crew, he's operating the camera, recording the images in his own hands, and then assembling that footage into the final film himself. He controls the whole process. And what are heist movies about but the process? Here's an exchange from an interview Matt Zoller Seitz conducted with Soderbergh. "If your ultimate satisfaction and validation doesn't lie in how the audience perceives the thing you've made, where does it lie? In the process." Meaning what? In the shooting and the editing? Yeah, in solving a problem. That never gets old. Being on set and trying to figure something out and then seeing it when it reveals itself. You see the next 15 shots in an instant. You know exactly what it needs to be, and you're in a mad rush to get those 15 shots as quickly as you can. That never gets old. In a classically structured heist movie of the kind Soderbergh has made 4 times, much of the movie consists of the characters figuring out, discussing, and planning the process by which they'll execute the heist, and then doing it. If heist movies are about filmmaking, then I think there's a direct line from the way these films are built so much around process to the way Soderbergh works. He is the process. In a way that a character's specific skill might be driving or explosives or pickpocketing, Soderbergh's skill is filmmaking. He is Danny Ocean, Livingston Dell, and the amazing Yen all rolled into one. So what was Soderbergh saying with Ocean's 11? It might be pointless to psychoanalyze filmmakers, but I like to do it, so we're gonna do it. He made that movie coming off the insane achievement of making both Traffic and Erin Brockovich in the same year, getting nominated for the Best Director Oscar for both and still winning. That has to be a challenging year. So to me, it makes perfect sense that he would want to tell a story about the romanticized, glamorous, slick, and cool version of what he had just done. Ocean's 11 feels effortless, something filmmaking never is. Ocean's 12, a sequel to a hugely successful movie, is about the team trying and struggling to replicate the success of their heist from the first film. It's directly about the difficulty of making a sequel. And Ocean's 13, which followed a couple experiments that had mixed success, was a return to safe ground, something reflected in the film's return to the more traditional structure and setting of the first film. Wait, stop. I had a bunch more of this written, further analyzing the psychological links between Soderbergh's fascination with the process of filmmaking and his fascination with heist movies. And then I found some interviews from last year where he just straight up says it himself. And then I realized, literally a week ago, I think it's because heists are so much like making a film. You're getting a gang together, there are external forces beyond your control, this may work, this may not, you could end up in movie jail, and it's important to remember that panic has never solved anything in the history of the world. The analogies are very clear. I don't know why it took so long for me to see what was right in front of me. I'll admit, I get some satisfaction from the fact that I realized the link between heist and filmmaking when I was 22, and it took Soderbergh until he was 54. Wait. The more I think about this, the more this one contradiction stands out. I've spent all this time talking about making movies as a one-man crew, how I do it, how Soderbergh and Rodriguez do it, and the connection between the filmmaking process and heist movies. But heist movies are also about collaboration, and making movies this way reduces collaboration. When I first started making movies, I would usually act in them as well, but relinquishing control of the camera stressed me out, so I took over that part. And the rare cases when I would delegate something usually worked out poorly. In college, I once had 4 separate composers flake out on me for a single project. Cases like that made it harder for me to trust people with different tasks. Matt and Jake will tell you that when they record audio for videos, I constantly double check that they're using the audio recorder correctly. I'm bad at collaborating, but I want to get better. For most viewers, the appeal of heist movies is the fantasy of stealing and the glamorous presentation, and I love that stuff too. But for me, part of why I love the genre is the fantasy of smooth, successful collaboration. I'm only realizing now that when I made that heist movie in college, it was about the leader driving away his collaborators until he was doing the heist alone. It was about a bad collaborator. Last week, I was talking through the idea for this video with Elsie, our summer intern, and she told me I should make it more personal, center it on myself more, and focus more on the idea of collaboration. And she was right. Not just about this video, but in general, these things turn out better when I bring in different perspectives and opinions and don't monopolize the entire process. This video got better, or at least more interesting, I think, because I collaborated. Instead of fetishizing the idea of being a one-man filmmaking team, maybe I should try opening up the process and including more people. What's interesting is that Rodriguez is currently stepping away from his usual process. With Alita Battle Angel, his new movie, it's written and produced by James Cameron, and for the first time ever, he's working with a separate cinematographer and editor. And Soderbergh, right around when he took over shooting and editing his movies, stopped writing them. So if heists are metaphors for filmmaking, maybe there's a lesson I should learn there. That the heists that succeed are the ones where the team works together, and the person in charge knows when to delegate. Okay. So what was the point of this video? What am I actually trying to say here?
I don't know. You still haven't sent me the script. And the only movies you've talked about that I'm at all familiar with are the Spy Kids trilogy and Shark Boy and Lava Girl.
Okay, great. So I should probably send you the script.
Yeah, that would help.
Cool, I'll do that. Hello guys, welcome back and thank you so much for watching. And yes, as you saw from this video, we actually do have an intern. We're like almost legit now. Elsie has been a huge help so far this summer, doing really great work, and you should go subscribe to her channel because she's making really cool stuff. The link is in the description. It should be right there on the screen. Go check that out. Now, as you can see here, if you missed the announcement, we now have official merch available. So if you want to get some of that, the link is right there. If you want to help us make our videos bigger and cooler because we're trying to expand the scope and ambition of what we're doing, go check out the Patreon. If you want to yell at me about stuff and get updates on what we're working on, follow me on all the social medias. And we'll be back next week with, I think, 2 new videos, including Patrick Explains Mission Impossible and why it's great. My parents are back. It's going to be excellent. Stay tuned.